All right, let's get started. We've got a long day ahead of us, so let's try and start a little bit on time. So we have 6 consent items. I will need a mover for those, but I am going to take number 5 out of consent because we have a delegation, so we'll deal with that after. Are there any other... Is there a mover for the consent items? Moved by Mayor Verbanovich. Okay, and so number 5 is being taken out, and hold on one second. Councilor Griswold?
No, I just have a general question that relates to 3, 4, and 5. Yeah,
so it's for all of them?
Well, I don't need to take them
like
out.
Like one question for all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you're taking out 5, I'll deal with it.
Okay, we'll just take all the traffic calming ones out. Does anybody else want anything else removed from consent? Seeing none, we'll vote on 1, 2, and 6. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, we're going to go to see if the delegation is here for Old Chicopee Drive, the traffic calming review, and it's Alfonso. Is Alfonso here? Okay, I don't see him, so if he does arrive, we can come back to it. I guess then we'll turn it over to Councilor Griswold for your questions on traffic calming.
My only question is that in all 3 of those, well, one of the criteria is that we have to hear from 50% of the people, and not any one of those 3 did we hit that target. What is the reason for that, and is that something we need to look at?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair, we hit the target with Carindale Drive, so we hit the minimum benchmarks there. Patricia Avenue, we didn't hit the minimum benchmarks, but we do feel that that one is a priority for pedestrian safety. So what you'll see is that there's only 2 measures on that plan, one of them that specifically ties to the pedestrian crossing. So we're viewing that one more of a pedestrian safety issue than anything else. And then with Old Chicopee Drive, part of the reason that we didn't hit it there is because of the size of the catchment area that we were reviewing. So generally speaking, when we're conducting surveys, the larger the catchment area, the less chance that we'll hit the minimum benchmark. So what we're really looking for there is to make sure that we have sufficient support. And in terms of Old Chicopee Drive and those that are directly affected, we feel that we have that. So that's why we've brought the 3 recommendations forward the way we have.
So we're satisfied that that criteria is still effective?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions, so we're dealing with the 3 traffic calming, number 3, 4, and 5. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we'll move into the discussion items. We're going to start with number 7, the Corporate Climate Action Plan. And we have Ms. Bennett here to give us a 5-minute presentation, and then there'll be questions. Good morning.
Good morning, through the chair. My name is Claire Bennett, for those of you I have not yet met, and I'm very pleased to be here today to present the City of Kitchener's first ever Corporate Climate Action Plan. I've been lucky to work with communications, so once approved, this will go to communications for final draft as well as summary version to have a more digestible document. And so today we'll be doing a brief overview of the purpose of the plan, the guiding framework of the plan, the engagement that was taken to develop the plan, as well as the goals that provide an overview of the subsequent action items. We will also be talking about the resolutions and recommendations related to the Green Building Design Standard, as well as additional capacity for the Corporate Sustainability Office. So the overall purpose of the plan, as you know, is to achieve an 8% absolute greenhouse gas reduction by 2026 using 2016 as the baseline. And we're doing this through an integrated way, so an integrated climate planning that considers both mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, so that's direct emissions that we release into the atmosphere through fossil fuels, as well as indirect emissions through waste and the degradation of waste and the greenhouse gas emissions that emits, as well as adaptation. And this is to prepare for potential impacts related to climate change. This can be things like extreme heat, the increase of disease, invasive species, for example, ash borer and ticks, as well as infrastructure damage from increased freeze-thaw cycles and precipitation. Just quickly want to say, so because of this, the key performance indicator of the plan is carbon reductions. However, subsequent benefits for the plan, as you see, most action items actually do have a return on investment. They also increase our process and quality efficiencies. They allow us to do more engagement with the community and staff. And they also allow us to achieve mandates that are set to us externally and internally through voluntary and formal mandates. So the guiding framework is a common industry framework for municipalities and climate action planning, both for mitigation and adaptation. So for mitigation, we follow the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program, which scopes the area of study into buildings, pumping stations, fleet, outdoor lighting, and waste. So that's why you see it framed the way it is in the plan. And for adaptation, that's local governments for sustainability, building adaptive and resilient communities program, which asks for a risk and vulnerability assessment, which was done in 2017 here at the City of Kitchener, as well as a variety of other criteria to formalize through this milestone process. Though we have achieved milestone 1 and 2 already, which has come to Council. We are currently on milestone 3, which is what this plan does. So this allows us to achieve milestone 3. There's a variety of criteria that we need to include in the plan to get this milestone. And the plan also sets the stage for achieving the remaining 2 milestones, milestone 4 and milestone 5, implementation and monitoring, respectively. So the engagement process was quite robust. We performed a series of engagement measures over several years, from 2017 till very recently. So this ranged from doing cross-section of staff engagement workshops to having booths set up in public spaces, COF cafeteria, for example, to actually going on site to community centers to speak with frontline staff, and joining in on, with operations crews to see field work and discuss with them what they would like to see in this sort of initiative. Most recently was a presentation to the Environmental Committee where they did endorse this plan in principle, with one recommendation which has been included in the staff report, and that is to do formal review after 3 years to see where we are, to see if we can potentially increase our greenhouse gas emissions. So the Corporate Climate Action Plan has 3 distinct parts and a series of goals and action items within these parts. So part 1 outlines the actual tangible actions and corresponding implementation plan. The staff report and appendix goes into more detail on these goals and action items, and then the full plan, of course, is much more detailed. Part 2 of the plan shows the program. So this is how we embed sustainability into the organizational structure. So this talks about measurement systems to adequately get quality data. This talks about process tools. Oh, am I done already?
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh.
That shouldn't be making noises.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know.
Speed up.
I'm guessing that's the button to press. Your 5 minutes is up, but you can continue.
Okay, I will go quickly. So part 2, just the measurement systems, the process tools, as well as the communication channels for a successful program. Part 3 is the process for formal review of the plan. It's a long-term plan, so it's essential that we do formal review of it because it's going to be constantly changing. These are the high-level goals. There's 8 goals with subsequent action items. I won't go through each of these. These deal with facilities, with fleet, with adaptation, as well as the process policy tools. So the next is green building. And I do just want to say, when we do have the unique opportunity to build a standalone building at the City of Kitchener, It is absolutely important to build a legacy building we are proud of that actually saves us operating costs. It's not often that we do have this opportunity, so to build a building that does achieve payback is a benefit. So the recommendation is to shift from LEED as the focus to move towards energy intensity as the focus. That doesn't preclude us from going after LEED certification. It just ensures that we do meet our energy reduction targets that we're looking for. And then lastly, talking about the Sustainability Office program, the goal is to have my role focus on strategic planning, policy program development, as well as project management, with associated grant application and reporting, both internally and external reporting. And this is on the corporate and community levels, because as you do know, we have corporate and community targets that are long-term and quite expansive. And the new role would be focused on engagement. Engagement is such a key item, and we have some short-term priorities that have been driven by residents, as well as senior leadership and council. And this relates to private landowner engagement through the stormwater program, fleet utilization, because there's massive opportunities to save fuel costs with behavioral change, as well as waste management at events, downtown areas, and in the office. And you may have heard that engagement alone has the opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions or make an impact significantly even more than operational changes do. And just finally, thank you very much for listening. I will leave up the recommendations that are included in the staff report.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have some questions. I'm just wondering, I didn't see the staff report. Did anyone else see it? Okay, then I just missed it. That's okay. Thanks. All right, with that, we will turn to Mayor Verbanovich first.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Claire, for this report. It is certainly in depth. It's certainly incredibly informative, and most importantly, I think it's really takes our community into the right direction with respect to sustainability. I do have a few questions that I wanted to touch on. The first one is on the building issue, and you talk about the transition to net zero ready or net zero buildings, and I also know there's this notion of energy positive buildings as well. But this isn't something new. I mean, there has been a building built in this region in that regard, and I'm just wondering if we can touch on that a little bit in terms of that context.
Sure. Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for your question. I appreciate this opportunity because it shows why it's a good idea to do an integrated plan, both adaptation and mitigation. So having a building standard that focuses on, say, net zero ready and the building envelope and is extremely valuable for both mitigation purposes, so reducing the amount of heating and cooling that you need, but also for adaptation. So in the say potential case of an outage, you can actually keep heat and cool in the building for up to 3 days. This did happen at the Evolve building, for example. Doing a building that's just 25% above building code in terms of energy efficiency has a payback. So we did a scenario planning on the new building at Schlegel, and to do just 25% above has a payback of approximately 7 years, whereas net zero ready is approximately 13 years. The building code building has no payback. And I did make that point about us being a long-term entity. We're a municipality, so payback periods of that amount shouldn't be anything that's too scary. And plus, having one as opposed to not having one is very beneficial. Net zero ready is where the industry happens to be moving towards in terms of design standards. It allows that we can build our own design standard in-house that's unique to us, that shows our values, but also maintains an energy intensity target. So you can actually be spending around the same money of doing, say, LEED Gold as you can to do net zero ready. You're just not paying those costs, extra costs for a consultant and for the certification process. And net zero ready is that attractive branding now that it's not necessarily in place. LEED is a wonderful design standard, but it does provide that recognition, which kind of shows, oh, they're going a little bit above and beyond. And it does focus, and that's why I gave the example on an airtight building. It really does start with that, the structure, the building envelope, building a quality building at the very foundation.
Okay, thank you. I know we have, through the Environment Committee, a citizens report on air quality that committee historically has been updating and tackling. Does that sort of blend in with this work?
Through the chair, air quality is an important indicator of green design for indoor air quality, so that would be a part of the design standard that we would develop. So bringing in what we've already done at the City of Kitchener for just general air quality, but for the building envelope too, air quality is extremely important, so it would be included, yes.
Okay, those are all the questions I have, and Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I'd be pleased to move this recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Up next is Councillor.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. I just want to commend you on this incredible body of work. You have taken this priority that Kitchenerites have told us for over 10 years is one of their top priorities, and you have now helped steward this this priority into making it achievable, measurable goals, and so thank you. And I'm really pleased to see this before us today. I also want to give kudos to whoever's working on this from the communication standpoint, because it's catchy and it's beautiful, and I know it will be well received in the community. What I want to know is, when you, just to follow up on Mayor Verbenovic's question, when you said that if we put in 25% extra in terms of the parameters for making it more efficient, when you said that there's a 7-year payback period, do you mean that it would be a payback to cover the cost of the 25% extra cost that you put in initially, or do you mean a payback, or can you explain that further?
Through the chair, the 25% is actually the energy improvements above building code. It would be about approximately, to do 25% improved energy efficiency above building code would probably be about a 5% premium on the total project cost, and that's where you get about a 7-year payback on that total project cost. To do even to go beyond that, to do net zero, you would have a payback, and that would achieve about, net zero ready would, and I'm using the example of the Schlegel building, that new facility coming, which is a fairly intensive, large building. If we did net zero ready for that building, we would achieve about a 13-year payback if we did net zero ready, and that's a 40% energy savings above the Ontario Building Code as it stands. So the 25% isn't the premium we're paying extra, that's the energy savings.
Okay, and the payback period is, I still don't fully understand what you mean by the payback period. What exactly is being paid back?
Through the chair, the dollars that we spend on the capital cost.
For the whole project, not the dollars we spend on that additional 25% energy conservation.
Through the chair, that's correct.
That's amazing. Why don't we do that for all buildings going forward? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Up next is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock, and thank you, Ms. Bennett, for this report. This is really exciting. My one question is just to touch upon what the mayor was mentioning about with buildings and net zero and all that stuff. So is it my understanding that the next capital projects that we're going to be looking at, in particular the Southwest District Park and Mill Courtland expansion and all that, are we going to be looking at towards net zero then?
Through the chair, I would recommend doing that. So I have worked with our finance groups and the project management team to both, because it needs to start at the very beginning business planning process. That's why the plan does showcase that in the part 2, because we do need to be budgeting that small premium in to get that payback. So that is the goal. It's very, very rare you get the opportunity to get net zero. You need the site to allow that, to do, say, geothermal or solar arrays. harder to do downtown, so we can't exactly say we can do that. But for this site, it is possible, and it's, again, that unique opportunity.
Okay, that sounds terrific. Other than that, yeah, I'm looking forward to having this plan implemented and move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola?
How long have we had a sustainability office?
Through the chair, it's been 1 year just now.
And how many people are in the sustainability office now?
Through the chair, myself.
And so we're doubling up on that? Is that?
Through the chair, that would be the hope.
Is it not possible to work for a few years without doubling our staff complement?
Through the chair, capacity would be restricted if that were the case in terms of this plan.
Mr. Reedman would like to...
No,
Nope.
it's okay.
Yes?
No,
Nope.
I don't want to waste my time here.
You good? Okay.
This is not new. We've been working on this for a number of years, have we not? Reducing our greenhouse gases.
Through the chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
through the chair, Kitchener has been quite advanced in terms of doing a lot of the low-hanging fruit. So we have been doing a variety of, say, LED upgrades. The program has not been dealt with comprehensively. So in terms of making the biggest return on our investment, for example, or any engagement, there's been no engagement programs. So that's why we've seen several different departments in the organization want to contribute financially even to this program because they see benefit in it as well.
We started out, did we not start out in 2008, and it's now 2019. I'd just like to know what we've accomplished in that last 10-year period. We're looking at the next 10-year period, but what have we accomplished in the last 10 years?
Through the chair, this plan it runs from 2016 to 2026, so I have actually summarized what we have done from 2016 to 2018 in the plan, and those and what that quantifies to in terms of carbon reductions, dollar savings, and energy savings. So from 2016 onwards, at least, I do have the answer to that, but prior to that, perhaps someone else can speak to it.
Okay, what are the answers to that? I'm not sure if I saw that, or what have we done in 2017 and 2018? What have we accomplished? Because we need to reduce our greenhouse gases by 102 cubic meters. Is that right?
Pardon me?
We have to reduce by 102 every year over a 10-year period.
Through the chair, it's not quite as straightforward as that because we will be adding greenhouse gas emissions through a variety of influencers. So this reduction plan shows how we would achieve that target. To be honest, just barely. The hope is that other initiatives will get funded through external funding availability, which we are seeing through the federal government. There are several funding streams that are open currently to sustainability funding, and they require that you have a sustainability lens and action plan in place in order to get that funding.
Well, your chart shows that from 2016 to 2026, we have to reduce a net reduction by 1022, which means 102 every year. So what have we done in 2017 and 2018?
Through the chair, some projects have been...
Have we accomplished our 102? No? Okay, we'll leave that.
No, Mr. Reedman would like to answer.
Through the chair, so an example of a significant project that was completed was the conversion of our streetlight network to LEDs, which sees about 200 GHG reduction per year and $1 million in operating cost savings per year. We're currently paying off that debt, and that's a 5-year payback period. Other examples are retrofits at the kitchen operations facility where the State of the City speech was. There's LED lighting in that bay that's on motion sensors. There's been the bringing up the water, the gray water system at the KOF, and there's a number of smaller examples like parking garage LED retrofits. Essentially, a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been completed. Now it's getting into the more detailed projects. And as Ms. Bennett has highlighted, we're bringing on new community centers and facilities. So as we bring those on, it's going to be even more challenging to reduce and meet that absolute target as the city grows. So the plan effectively outlines how to get there with partnerships with other levels of government.
Okay, in here somewhere it said that the LED reduced it by 134. You gave a different figure. It also says the LEDs are...
Got it this time. Go
Sorry?
ahead. Go ahead.
The LED,
I thought I turned it off last time.
the
I think I turned it off this
LEDs
time.
change is saving us $1.2 million over 5 years or something. That's 240,000. We're not saving $1.2 million every year.
Mr. Reedman,
I
sorry.
mean, there's a difference between 240,000 and $1.2 million.
Through the chair, we are currently paying off the debt, so we did accrue debt to pay for the streetlight conversion, so the savings currently now are offsetting that debt payment.
Yeah. Okay, I have a number of other questions. I'll
You
come
can
back.
queue back in, yeah, there's a few more questions. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, hi, Claire. Thank you very much for this. I think it's great to see that the corporation is taking these sustainability issues seriously. But my question has to do with how do we take these adaptation initiatives and mitigation initiatives and go beyond just the corporation? So, we've got all of this development going on. We've got the Urban Design Manual, which speaks a bit to, sustainability guidelines. We've got the bonusing thing happening. How do we give it more teeth so that the city can, whether it be introducing bylaws or things that would require, I'm thinking of development sites primarily because it's harder maybe to enforce this on homeowners, but how do we give it teeth so that it goes beyond just the walls of the corporation?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So this plan does include some elements of community engagement, particularly with the market-based incentive program as well as with waste, anything in our public spaces ultimately. But that is the goal and hope for my role, is to be able to have capacity to get more involved on the community side. So through Climate Action Waterloo Region, for example, I am the management committee rep on their group, so that's the sort of project we will be dealing with. I am being engaged by Justin's group. I'm late on doing a review for the development manual. Hopefully I'll have time to do that this week, and so they're doing wonderful things on exactly what you're speaking to, so I am being engaged on that. It's just a matter of capacity for myself to be involved on that, but that is the goal going forward, to be a little bit more involved on that side.
And can you see any of the, things that come to my mind are green roofs or solar panels or alternative energy sources or, big builds, maybe energy efficient appliances? It would all be requirements. But are there any things that you see that could be worthwhile to research further and to find ways to make them requirements?
Through the chair, we are doing this research now, and there's actually a stakeholder group between all municipalities and townships to look at green design guidelines for us to do as a region, so that we're not pushing anyone out to different cities. As say the City of Kitchener requires a certain design guideline that's above and beyond. We want to be doing it together. So we actually have that initiative in place, and I do sit on that group. I am participating, and I know that is a specific project through Climate Action Waterloo Region as well. It's a balance between what's allowed through the provincial code, section 41, and what we can do with that. So we've been getting some incredible information from the City of Toronto, who's just light years ahead in terms of this area. So we want to frame that and start with a phase in terms of what's possible for us right now within our existing staff levels. what can we do with the existing site plan process to mobilize this, and where can we go over the next few years. There's starting points such as solar or reflective roofs and LED requirements that are just easy to implement because there's nominal costs related to that, but it is a balance between, and as well we want to be doing a lot of developer engagement. That's why we are working with Sustainable Waterloo Region and Climate Action Waterloo Region on that, to make sure the developers are on side with us during this process and aware. So this is currently projects underway.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a great body of work, and I think a transformative direction for this the city to take and have as a corporate action plan. I'm glad that we are considering looking out and mandating requirements through the private industry and its build. But we got to get our house in order first. We got to lead by example, and I think this is the first step for us to start implementing that. And although that's going to come with cost, much of that, my hope is that it would be through aspect of sustainability. So the new hire that's proposed, that's going to come through the reserve fund. And is there an action plan already established to build in a refunding into that reserve fund already?
Through the chair, the position is actually proposed to come through the operating budget that was approved through the Sustainability Office in the 2019 budget cycle. This includes contributions from the Stormwater Group as well as the Fleet Group for those funds. So it isn't exactly it's no funding ask. The reserve fund is to do projects with short-term payback. Right. So I need to get going on setting up those projects, and so we have 2019 projects already planned, as well as 2020, and those projects all have very low paybacks.
Okay, so I think I was a little mistaken. I thought because there's no funding asked because we established the reserve. So has council already approved this new hire through the budget then?
Through the chair, they've approved the operating budget. We wanted to present this plan to show the expanse of work and the long-term type of work that this is, to then ask for a full-time role, because I do know that's obviously a big ask. Okay, so I'll ask further to that, and this may go back to Justin. I don't think Councillor Gazzola asked, improper question of, do we really need to hire a staff person right away? I think another leading question could be the fact, could we incorporate through some reorganization to accommodate this new position until we go out for a full-time hire? Was that looked at first?
Mr. Rubin?
Through the chair, yes. So within development services, we are looking at our total headcount, and we are completing our development services review, which is looking at opportunities to restructure how we deliver service. But with the body of work that's outlined in this plan, we do see a need for an FTE. So the budget did set aside money for that resource, but we held off on filling that until we had the plan before council, because we didn't want to jump the gun in terms of order and process. There is a significant body of work, and as Ms. Bennett has highlighted, the community side is a big scope of work, and we have an ambitious target of 80% below 2010 levels by 2050. And that work is just starting underway with Sustainable Waterloo Region, and a big component of that is outreach. The other component is that market-based research, which we are looking for creative funding opportunities for this. So the RAIN program, in partnership with REAP, is something that has been contemplated. It's been in the Stormwater Master Plan.
No, I appreciate that, and I think the reason why I thought that there's a necessity to ask that question. Again, a lot of times the public could perceive, well, these are really lofty ideas. But, and I think it's important that staff have answered it, that we have looked at all avenues. And this is the necessary step to take for us to be able to accomplish what we've laid out as a plan. So we looked at it as an organization, and there's an absolute necessity of a hire, as opposed to looking at other avenues.
Yeah, through the chair, if I can just clarify one further point. The 60% energy efficiency reduction from behavior alone is an important thing that we're missing out on. So I've heard sort of horror stories about, like a community center propping up a set of doors because it's an inconvenience for their members to open, but that's actually part of the building envelope. So it's really reaching out, engaging with staff to make sure that our buildings are operating as they're planned to, rather than us sort of circumventing things and reducing. That's low-hanging fruit. That's,
Right.
Ms. Bennett doesn't have the time to go out and do, but if we're able to rectify those things, that saves us on energy costs and energy bills as a corporation.
That's excellent. And I'm glad that we will be able to, leverage on that low-hanging fruit with your work that you're doing to the strategic planning. I'm assuming that there will be some level of payback from this new hire as well.
Through the chair, absolutely. The projects, the vast majority of projects and actions highlighted in here have a payback.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Thanks for this excellent report. It looks fantastic, and the content is just great. I noticed that part of the goal is to complete a comprehensive review of existing waste programs to improve and expand service areas. I'm hoping that will include our community centers and the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium and all our facilities where there's a lot of attendance. Is that?
Through the chair, absolutely. The waste area is really where we can leverage and develop community level programming, and Kim was just here. I've spoken with all key stakeholders many times through this process, and Kim and I have some wonderful ideas for specific programs at the OD. There's big opportunities there, yes.
That's wonderful, and I like the way that we're positioning ourselves here. We're getting out way ahead of the curve, and our ability to get funding through the FCM Green Fund is going to be phenomenal. So great work.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. I just want to say that I think that you have been doing an amazing job as the one person that's taken on this initiative and has been leading the direction. And you've had some great things that you've been able to do on your own in the last little while. And I'm fully supportive of us bringing in another person to help you. The other thing I wanted to ask about is, have we thought about partnerships with our educational institutions here? We've got UW with its Faculty of Environment, its science faculties as well. Certainly Laurier, the students in the School of Business there are always looking at doing case studies. Conestoga College has got a leading edge program in terms of architectural design and green building there. So we're so rich in terms of our academic institutions here. Those students need to be working on capstone projects. They need to have co-op experiences where they can come in and where you can pay people less to do some really great work for you. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on looking into those community resources that we have here.
Through the chair, it's a wonderful point. It's something I've been actively involved in my entire career, as Councillor Chapman knows, in my previous role, and even actually in my role here. We've worked with Laurier students on developing policy for this plan itself. So it would be something that would be an incredible opportunity for the engagement role to be able to help coordinate, because it is, and they deserve enough feedback and mentorship. I don't want to bring somebody on and not give them the help and guidance that they do need. So to have extra capacity, that allows us to form these community partnerships.
That's great. I'm excited to see that.
Councillor Michaud?
Thank you. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat here this morning. This report is exceptional. You've done an amazing job. I want to commend you on that. I really like the portion that we're going to engage the entire region in this. I think Kitchener can be the lead on this, but bringing everyone into the fold is awesome, and I would fully support another staff member for you, because this is certainly not a one-man show. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the first round. I have a bunch of people in the queue. Is it for second round? I know yours is Councillor Gazzola. Yours is yeah, okay. Councillor Gazzola.
This is, I find this is sometimes a very complex issue, and referring to page 7.2, I can understand where we're trying to go. We're very simple. We're trying to reduce our greenhouse gases by 8% over the next over a 10-year period. But I start to read as to what somewhat, the Waterloo, Climate Action Waterloo region wants an 80% target. What does that mean? Where are they going? And I hear about the Paris Climate Conference says we want to decrease by 1.5 centimeters. How do these things all fit together?
Through the chair, excuse me. So this was to set the policy context for why we are driven to do a plan such as this, and then to follow up on action and implementation. So it starts from that global context you referred to, and the community planning is a key part of our overall City of Kitchener community GHG, greenhouse gas reduction targets and action planning. So that 80% is reducing our greenhouse gases in the City of Kitchener, Waterloo region in general, by 80% by 2050. And so the City of Kitchener, we're a very, very large corporation in the region, so this plan significantly contributes to, as well, our community goals.
So if I understand correctly, then across the region we want to do 80%. We are doing 1/10 of that by reducing by 8%?
Through the chair, we are a part of it. There's many other parts. Transportation is the biggest amount of emitting in that plan, so that's personal vehicle. It's framed differently in community action planning. It's residential, it's ICI, so that's the business community. It's transportation, like we said, food and agriculture waste. So that's how it's framed. Transportation is going to be a big area and buildings that we will be focusing on in Climate Action Waterloo Region initiatives.
Okay.
Mr. Eidman, did you want to add something?
Yeah, through the chair, there's two differences that I wanted to highlight. One is our plan is till 2026, and the other one is till 2050. The other one is the baseline years that were selected. So the community climate plan baseline year is 2010, and ours is 2016 or 2015?
2016.
2016. The change from the province from shifting over from coal to more or less energy intensive electricity sources is a big win for a lot of people that have an earlier baseline year. So as a community, that is factored in. As a city, that is not factored into our reduction. So that's already a given reduction that we've had, but it's not part of our plan for the corporation.
I want to go now dealing with the setting of these new standards. You've answered some of the questions that I wanted to hear about, but I want to make sure that I'm on the right. If we go to this 25% energy improvement, you're saying that the cost will increase by 5%. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's approximate.
Well, no, yeah, I don't expect you to pin it down. But so if we go to now, then there's net zero, net zero ready. That's the next category. What does that do? What are the cost increase there?
Through the chair, net zero ready means that if we don't have the capital costs to go full net zero energy, we could build a net zero ready building that with a year or two down the road, when we do have the capital costs to finish it off, the building is structurally ready to be net zero. So net zero ready is, say, 3/4 of the way to net zero. So it builds a roof that can structurally support solar panels, for example, and it would be approximately 40% energy improvements above the building code, 40% more energy.
And what would the costs increase?
So through the chair, the incremental cost increase for Schlegel, for example, is about $850,000.
So what percentage? That doesn't mean it. What percent? In the first case, cost increase would be 5% higher. In this next case, what would the cost increase be?
Through the chair, it's about 10% premium.
10%. Okay, then we go to net zero energy, the next category. Just simple question, what would the cost increase be for that category?
Through the chair, it would be approximately 12 to 13%.
Okay. Now, when you answered one of the questions, this 7-year payback, that's paying back the cost of the incremental cost. It's not paying the cost of the full cost. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it's the full capital cost of the project.
The full capital cost of the project by increasing 5%, we're going to save the full cost of the project over a 7-year period?
Through the chair, that's That's correct. It has to go through more in-depth energy modeling. This was a high-level study, but you're saving so much in heating and cooling, which are very, very high cost, that it would pay it back, yes.
I hate to say this, but that's a no-brainer, but I have to question that by an increase of 5%, we pay off the building in 7 years. Okay, that's the cost of the building? Yeah. No, not the extra cost. That's what I'm trying to clarify. It's the entire cost.
Just a second. Mr. Reedman's going to speak first, and then we'll have a point of order.
Through the chair, so we'll follow up with an email on the overall capital cost changes and report back for council.
Okay.
Well, okay, I think that is important, okay?
Do you still have a point of order, or good? Okay.
No, I haven't complimented you on this report. It's an excellent report. I read it all. Now, I am a little disappointed. Like, one of our goals, page 710, is to paper reduction, And I was disappointed to see this. Look at how clear that is right there. And thank you.
That's the only report I got in writing. All the rest is on the computer, so same comment. I was just surprised to see the paper copy, but that's okay. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I think I brought this up in a previous meeting, but we talk about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, but we don't talk about what we produce in greenhouse gas emissions. Again, when we think of everything from infrastructure, the manufacturing of the products that go into the building of that new community center or that new 39-story building. How do you balance that? Because to say that our goal is 8% reduction, maybe our production is 150, 300, 500%. So what really is what's the outcome, I guess, is my question.
Through the chair, it's a very good point, because we're only considering energy is framed within scope 1, 2, and 3 energy, so that's direct and indirect emissions, and so we're not considering full life cycle in that costing. For us to move towards, and I do speak to it, in our procurement section of the plan, to start investigating true total cost of ownership analysis where possible. That is promoting life cycle costing, so we can understand where the materials, because this is actually starting to be required through what's called a climate lens at federal reporting. And this isn't just for green infrastructure, it's through their infrastructure grants in general. They require this sort of data, so if we can at least get it through the procurement process when we're going through tender for contractors to respond with what the intensity is, we at least have that information.
Okay. I think I've got the organization correct here, but I may not. I recall that the Global Footprint Network did a study of the municipal footprint, ecological footprint. And a number of cities across the country, I think Calgary and maybe Vancouver and others in the U.S., signed on to this study to sort of determine what their ecological footprint really was, sort of as a starting point to move forward and say, okay, what does it look like, and what maybe more could we do? Anyway, I just invite you to have a look at that.
Through the chair, just one quick comment. So we are measuring every year our greenhouse gas footprint through just those direct and indirect emissions. So every year I am reporting on this through Sustainable Waterloo Region's Regional Sustainability Initiative. But bringing in a fuller picture, I think, is where governments are pushing us. And similarly with waste, on a provincial level, we really do need to gear up to more stringent waste requirements that are coming in the next few years, even under the existing federal government. So what you're speaking to is something that I think is very useful to be considering. So thank you.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just the corporate footprint, right? Mm-hmm. It goes beyond. It talks about the whole municipal footprint as a whole. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So quickly, I just want to touch on some aspects of cost, and from other questions asked and some points made, no matter what you do, it's never enough, right? It's just the task at hand is so paramount, but at the same time, it's so daunting at the same time. But that being said, it also has to be something that can be absorbed and sustained by the community to take these steps. So my, I wouldn't say concern, but I had a further question on the second paragraph where it says, well, our endeavor to achieve the 8% absolute greenhouse reduction, but with possible consideration of establishing a greater GHG. So can you clarify certain caution of having a constant moving target?
Through the chair, can you repeat your question? Sorry, I'm not totally
So in the second paragraph
of the first page,
it outlines our commitment to an 8% reduction,
Yep.
but also in the last sentence it says, with possible considerations of establishing a greater GHG within the 3 years.
Oh, for the recommendation.
Yeah.
Sure. Through the chair.
So my question was about a constant moving target, rather than being committed to that 8% and then coming back and seeing how was that accomplished and how can we do more within aspects of sustainability, rather than committing to that moving target ahead of time.
Through the chair, I think I like having a target because it allows me to be very objective in our path forward.
Which we do on at 8%.
8% is something that, you know, clearly I would love to see us be able to improve. I was very appreciative of the Environmental Committee to come back with that recommendation because it does allow us to formally review how we're doing, because it could be we're not doing very well. We need to get our ducks more in a row on this, or we're actually doing better than we thought we were because we got some external funding. There was more capacity being built through this partnership or that, so we can actually say that potentially we can go higher, but I understand what you're saying because it's something that has many influencers, because we're always adding behavior as an influencer, and that's why the behavioral program is so vital. We're seeing, we have very clear data, for example, in fleet, there's massive opportunity to save emissions, reduce emissions and costs.
So that's great. So there's advent of new technology or new methodology, and sometimes you just don't realize the efficiencies that you can derive in that GHG reduction. So that's fine if it outlines that additional focus on, consideration of a greater establishment of reduction, right? But my concern is at the cost. So could this paragraph establish a commitment within the established cost, as opposed to a recommendation within 2 years coming back and saying, you know what, 8% is not enough. Maybe you should be doing 10%, but it's going to cost us much more.
Right. Through the chair, I think cost is definitely something that we need to consider, but I believe this plan is extremely pragmatic, and that is my approach to this field in general. So what we can do is always pair projects that will increase by reducing natural gas, for example. That's going to be our biggest carbon reduction. But that's our biggest, that actually adds operating expenses. So the approach is to pair that with projects that reduce electricity. That saves us money, so that at very minimum we're net neutral, but actually for the most part in this plan it actually shows a cost savings. So there's always opportunity to do cost savings. You're
And
just
that will
putting
be
a
within
little bit
the
up front,
sustainability.
but there's a payback.
Okay. Fair enough. Within my time, quickly, the last question I had.
Justin, did you want to add something, Justin? Mr. Riemann?
Through the chair. So the value of coming back in 3 years is to say, to check in with council rather than waiting longer in the program. So I do think there is merit there, and one of the option may well be to stick with the 8%. The other side of this is the intensity-based side of it. So this is an absolute reduction target. As we all know, Kitchener grew at, I think it's 2.6% last year, which is the second fastest growing municipality in Canada. So that makes our intensity target much higher than what we initially projected. So I think it is good to have that check-in in 3 years, and that would be up to council to decide whether or not to change that target.
Okay, that's fair. I thought just establishing a commitment for this term of council, but I appreciate that. The last question I had was with partnerships, and you mentioned REAP as one of them, and I'm sure there's others, and Councillor Johnson mentioned the importance of including our institutions, educational institutions as well. But how about Kitchener-Roma Hydro with their effort of a non-regulated entity of GRE? Is that going to be a focus?
Through the chair, benefit of me being in this region for quite a long time is I'm very familiar with all of these folks and have worked with them for a very long time, and we'll continue to work with them. I meet with GRE on a fairly frequent basis. So beyond our community and climate action plans, I mean, there's other scopes I need to be involved with as well, and that's community adaptation planning and community energy investment strategy, because it all relates. So even what I'm presenting in terms of the scope is not the full scope. So I'm very engaged with GRE, for example.
Good. Glad to hear it. Thank you.
All right, that appears to be all the questions that we have for you, so thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now turn it over to comments. Everyone can have a comment. I'm not going to say you can't. I just remind everyone that we have a long day, and I'd like to take a break after this item for a couple minutes just to stretch our legs because we have such a long day ahead of us. So with that, Mayor Verbanovich.
Just very quickly, I will move the recommendation. I will thank staff again. Claire, being a one-person show, has done yo person's work in this corporate sustainability office, in particular in terms of the work that's been done putting this plan together. Obviously, working with others throughout our organization in terms of getting it together. I think as a community we have consistently demonstrated our commitment towards the environment and sustainability initiatives. This report and this recommendation continues to build on that, and our commitment last year in terms of the 80% reduction by 2050, which, as was pointed out, does speak to the commitments made in the Paris COP21 climate change accord. And I think, this coupled with the fact that there's funding that is going to be available, that we know both in terms of funding that was made available in this budget and funding that has a green lens attached to it through other sustainability kinds of dollars from the federal infrastructure. I think this report and the initiatives outlined in it put us in good stead to get our fair share of those dollars going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I want to start by asking you, when you take the vote, to break it into 4 parts. And I'll explain now why and move on quickly. Just to speak concerning the Sustainability Office, I find it interesting. This is the second time in 2 committee meetings that members of council are learning that they approved something in the budget and really weren't aware of it till now. When that was dealt with at the budget, I did not support it. It's not that I don't think it's a good idea. It's not that I don't support us going in that direction. But to me, it's a bit of a nice to have, wish, as something that we really need. But having said that, I have no problems with that. But I would like us to learn how to walk before we run. So let's leave this new department, division, let it really get its feet wet before we start doubling up on FTEs. The second part that I want to deal with is changing the standard, and I have no problems with it. I think it's a good direction to move in, but I'd like to know what we're dealing with, and I have no problem with moving a recommendation that says from now on, every time we look at something, we take that into account and we measure that at the time. And I can be supportive of that, but we need to look at an individual situation to see what's involved, as opposed to passing a rule today that we really will be required to live with down the road. So I'm not opposed to that. So I don't want anybody saying I'm not concerned about corporate climate. I'm the only one in the street that has 2 green bins and 3 blue boxes. So I totally believe in it.
All right, thank you. All 4 parts, okay. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think I've already said some comments through my questions. I'm quite supportive of what's before us and the steps that we're taking. An aspect for questions of clarity of how is it being paid for. It's not necessarily of the fact that some of us may not be aware of that we passed it, but a reaffirmation that it's within the budget and we've already allocated a commitment through the budget for this action to take place. And that's been affirmed by staff. And as well as, it's great to see what we can do within our current resources, but staff have said that they've looked at all avenues, and to meet our necessary targets, that we do need that additional staff hire. What I see this as a self-funded model, at the beginning at least, and it just doesn't, it would be foolish for us to not take these steps. It's like, going to the gym and eating healthy and being paid for it. Why wouldn't you do it? So it's taking the right steps that will fund itself and pay for itself in early stages, and for us to meet that at least 8% target, and for us to have hopefully a higher commitment, depending on where that will of our community is. So it's a necessary steps to take, but at the same time it's important to be cautious. So my comments would be that let's go for that low-hanging fruit right away first. Let's not try to be too grand all at once. Go for the low-hanging fruit, establish projects that will pay for themselves, and outline a good stewardship that is a good example for our building community as well, and build that business case so we can pass that model on to others as well. And I'm glad that we will consider partnerships with other organizations, and I think GRE is a kind of an arm's length, but still kind of like that cousin that you can work with, and hopefully build something together that can be transformative and positive for this community, and that can pay back for our taxpayers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey?
Thank you. I realize we're tight for time today. I'll be brief. I haven't spoken till now. I'd be remiss not to comment. First acknowledge the work that Ms. Bennett's done in this on her own. I think it's time, and I tend to agree with staff that a lot of the lowest hanging fruit has been taken care of, and now we need to get more granular in order to hit these targets. Sustainability is very important to me. It's very important to the people that I represent, and I think that I hope to see it's unanimous in terms of the support. I think without supporting the resources that have to go behind this, I think that would be a mistake. I do believe that of all the things that we do, governments from top to bottom, it's climate action, sustainability that we're going to be judged most harshly on 25, 50, 100 years from now. So I hope to see this unanimously supported.
Councillor Chapman?
Yeah. So given the critical, the cities around the world, and Claire, you may be familiar with this, have identified a global climate emergency. I am fully in support of creating this new position, but I would like to add a recommendation to what's already on the list, and that would be that the new full-time position job description include a full municipal review of the City of Kitchener's ecological footprint. Do you need me to repeat that?
Yep.
Yeah. That the new full-time position job description include a full municipal review of the City of Kitchener's ecological footprint.
Got it, Diane? Got it? Okay. All right, we'll take that amendment at the appropriate time. We still have a few more comments. So, Councillor Marsh.
I want to thank Councillor Chapman for her thoughtfulness on this idea. However, I'm not comfortable with directing staff before asking for their feedback on that. So what I would suggest is that we defer that motion before voting on it, and I would just ask that we have discussions, unless Councillor Chapman already has, with staff to see what that might entail, and because I'm guessing that the work plan for the new position already is full without that. But that's my suggestion. It's for the councillor to decide what to do next.
Or we could potentially refer it to the council meeting, so
If we could come up with that job description.
so we can get an answer from staff and have that discussion.
Okay,
in an
I'm
email.
I'm willing to defer if
So
if staff
refer.
could provide that job
Yeah,
description.
refer it to council. Yeah, Mayor Verbanovich?
Just very briefly, I would suggest, I mean, I think we need that information, but I would also suggest to Councillor Chapman that maybe her proposed motion might be that we ask that work, be included in the work plan rather, because council typically doesn't get in the habit of writing job descriptions. So I would suggest that that may be what we ask staff to respond to, adding it to the work plan.
Okay. Does that work for you? You just wanted to get it done. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the referral motion just to make sure that everyone's on board. To refer the amendment, which is asking staff to add to the work plan a full municipal review of the City of Kitchener ecological footprint. Those in favor? Referring to council. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. So now we will deal with clause number 1, and recorded vote's been called. That's carried unanimously. Next is clause number 2, which is the 3-year monitoring program. That's also unanimous. The next one is the update, the corporate green building design from LEED Gold to the energy intense base target. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And the last item is for permanent full-time equivalent to support the Corporate Sustainability Office. Those in favor? And those opposed? That carries. Okay, we are going to take a 3-minute break, and it might ding at us to come back. So 3 minutes. I'm going to see if it works. All right, let's settle back in for another exciting topic. All right, let's get going with our next item, which is the Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy. And Mr. Schmidt's here to give us a 5-minute presentation, and then we have 3 registered delegations, and then we'll ask questions of staff. So, welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and Council. We will start this presentation with a short video about Kitchener's urban forest. Would you please start the video now?
Surrounded by rapid change, I keep quietly still, unnoticed to many.
Yet, a changing climate means you are more important to our well-being than ever.
I shared life with your mother's great-grandfather.
And you'll be there for my children's great-grandchildren.
You need my shelter and shade.
As do many other living things that call you home.
I offer communities health and even wealth.
You give us beauty and bounty.
I improve the air you breathe.
And the soil we play on.
I can do all of this because you give life to me.
You do all of this for us, but we also need to take care of you too.
Trees are part of the fabric of our city, our green infrastructure. Maintaining that infrastructure contributes to our social, economic, and environmental well-being. But to continue to receive the benefits of the urban forest, we need to actively plan and manage it. Learn more about Kitchener's Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy at kitchener.ca/trees.
Oh, My apologies. Several city surveys have told us residents see trees as being an important part of their city. We also know that residents play a key role in achieving a sustainable urban forest on private and public lands. In developing Kitchener's first urban forest strategy, engaging the community was a key objective. During the first two phases of engagement, which we reported on at the May 7th, 2019 Strategic Council session, we connected with more than 1,800 residents. Over 8 weeks in the spring of 2018, when the draft urban forest strategy was out for public comment, we heard from 114 residents through Engage. Overall, there was strong support for the draft strategy, proposed actions, and direction. After a comprehensive process, we are pleased to present Kitchener's first sustainable urban forest strategy today for Council's consideration. This strategy will act as the guiding document for our urban forest for the next 10 years. A sustainable urban forest maximizes the benefits of trees while minimizing the associated risks and costs. This strategy is built around the 5 branches of a sustainable urban forest, which are to plan first, the cornerstone of a sustainable and resilient urban forest, engage often and widely, building critical support, collaboration, and stewardship, maintain proactively to increase health, longevity, and resiliency, protect prudently to maintain what we already have, and plant correctly and deliberately, ensuring future generations a vibrant canopy. Guided by these 5 branches, along with community and council priorities, the 2019 budget process approved several actions that could be achieved over the next 3 years. In summary, these quick wins are addressing tree risk and setting a canopy target, mitigating risk trees and improving customer service, and increasing tree planting activities on city and private lands. Achieving a sustainable urban forest will take time. As the next step, staff have prepared a 5-year implementation plan, are recommending that it be directed to the business, planning, and future budget process. The 5-year plan identifies 7 priority areas that are to increase tree planting to achieve a defined canopy target, implement a proactive management program for city trees, explore options to conserve and protect the urban forests, complete a natural area management plan, create an emergency response plan, review tree planting pilots, and realign ongoing capital elements into operating. Your report provides more detail along with the estimated financial impact to implement. It is staff's opinion that moving forward on these 7 areas, along with the work already underway, will move the city towards a more sustainable and proactive urban forest that maximizes benefits while minimizing costs and risks. That concludes my presentation. The staff report identifies 4 recommendations for Council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to the delegations and then we'll ask questions of staff. So if you have rang in, I have written down your names and we will go back in that order when we get to questions of staff. So our first delegation is Judy Ann Chapman from the Green Belt Neighborhood Association.
Madam Chair, Mayor Burbank, councillors, and city staff, thank you for this opportunity. And I should say to start off, the tree strategy referenced both Love My Hood, and thanks to him, I've got a Love My Hood hoodie, and the trees, which is supporting Dave Smith, because you could see all kinds of trees in your audience. We all thought independently this was the way to go. We have a unique area. All areas are different and unique in Kitchener, but we have 47% tree canopy in Greenbelt compared to the 26% citywide. And this represents a unique situation that may require unique opportunities, but not just for our area, for all the similar areas. And I'm hoping that I am going to get this to, nope, okay. No, that second one. Yes, great. Okay. So just hitting the highlights, David Schmidt has done a lot of work that's most appreciated. And the emphasis that I pick off here relate to our particular area. The fact that trees start providing returns once they reach 40 years. Anyone that knows our area, I know we're not allowed to mention street names, but there are mature forest areas of the city. Ours is one of them. And I consider this our heritage. And we have had some situations that I hope we are going to stop one way or another, and to preserve our mature forest, which our predecessors put there for us. Clear cutting, which has taken place on one small street on at least 2 properties in the last few years, has got to stop. And we need all of your help to do that. The mature urban forest deserves city bylaws to protect them. Okay. I'll get this down about the time. Okay, where am I supposed to head this? Okay, that would be perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so we were kindly supplied by staff some relevant pieces of information, and this is coming not from David Schmidt's area. The fact that properties less than an acre are not covered by all the beautiful provisions that are there for more than an acre. And I have to say that most of the urban properties, mature forests, privately owned, are less than an acre. But less than an acre is still a large portion of mature forest. And so we really hope that there's going to be a closing of the gap for redevelopment, which is what's taking place in our area. We have the next slide, please. Thank you. I refer to the particular area, Branch 4, protect prudently, maintain. Sorry, the last, may I go back, please? Thank you. Our action number 11, protecting prudently, maintaining and maximizing what we already have, which includes protecting trees from development. The bolding is mine, and other impacts. And I'm just going to read this. You've had them before you, but I want to emphasize, conserve and protect the urban forest prudently on public and private lands, where most of the urban forest takes place on private lands. And the fact that they are not planning any immediate action, although I understand from staff they are thinking about looking at this, and I do appreciate that. We need to review and potentially update existing bylaws and policies that protect city trees. We are long past watchful waiting and hoping that a different course is going to take place. For over 40 years, I have been coming to council, and some of my other members of the neighborhood, Doug Good led the last one when I was out of town. It has been consistent. We have a very unanimous voice in our area, except for the one developer that all of a sudden decides they want to remove the forest. It's time to move on. It's time to get the protection. It'll make city staff's lives a lot easier if they have the bylaws in place. Next slide, please. What can we do? I think we deserve better standing than action item number 11 on branch 4, although I understand there are ways to modify this. I think the easiest way is to stratify. There are low canopy areas where planning, meaning forest planning, is very important, and it can be underforested areas of the city. And this is where I see David Schmidt's work as predominantly taking place. We have high tree canopy areas. I'm hopefully going to hear from some of the other residents shortly on those. And I think in those areas we have to move on like ASAP to the planning department, looking for bylaws that are going to protect those trees. Other cities have it, Kitchener does not yet. You can crib from other cities, you can do whatever's required, but working concurrently on these two strategies rather than sequentially is where I see we can make great progress the fastest. And I want to thank you on behalf of the trees' lives you're going to be saving by proactively looking at these issues and moving on to a framework that will protect for our generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Before you sit down, there are some questions for you. Councillor Johnston. That's okay.
Yes, thank you. So thank you so much, Ms. Chapman, for coming in today. And it's actually really wonderful to see that we have so many people here today from Ward 8. We do represent a large part of the urban tree canopy in the Greenbelt neighborhood, certainly the Westmount area, as well as Forest Hill. And so this is truly an important issue and something that's near and dear to people there, and that's why many people choose to live in our neighborhoods, is because of our beautiful tree canopy. So thank you very much for presenting. And my question will be for you, but also for Ms. McGoldrick as well. And I'm wondering how does the city take a look at kind of the balance here between protecting trees on private property, and also looking at the balance of how people manage their own private property as well.
Ms. McGoldrick.
So through the chair, the first thing I do want to clarify from Ms. Chapman's presentation is in regard to the listing of actions. The actions aren't in any particular order of priority. They're essentially laid out in terms of specific branches, but again, not in a prioritized fashion. And so last spring, we did hear from council that a priority in terms of looking at the first 5 years was around protecting trees, and you'll see that laid out in the 5-year implementation plan. In terms of the balance between public and private lands, we recognize, and this has been a premise of the Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy, is that each play an important role, and that we can't look at one exclusive of the other. Our complete urban forest canopy is what provides value to the residents of Kitchener, and in fact, we've looked at opportunities to provide support around encouraging private urban canopy, whether it be maintenance or planting through a partnership with REAP, which is one of the recommendations you'll see today. And then certainly as part of the 5-year plan, we do want to look at protective measures. Those vary from restrictive bylaws to education to providing additional supports in terms of maintenance. And so we would want to look within this 5-year plan, we would want to look at what are those suite of options and bring those options back to council for consideration.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions we have. Thank you very much for coming in. Our next delegation is Patrick Gilbride. You're welcome. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Patrick Gilbride, and I'm the manager of Green Infrastructure Programs at REAP Green Solutions. Thank you for hearing my delegation in support of the Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy. I'll refrain from commenting specifically on the sections of the report in which REAP Green Solutions is proposed as a collaborative partner to avoid any conflict of interest. But I just want to tell a story of kind of how we've intersected over the years. Over the last couple of years, our paths have followed a parallel journey with the city's urban forest strategy. Early on in our Rain Smart Neighborhoods project, which was in Ward 8 and Ward 10, we attended a community tree planting in Lakeside Park and first encountered a city staffer who was doing the public consultation on the urban forest strategy and gathering feedback. Since that first encounter in 2017, we have been working closely with the residents around Lakeside Park who care passionately about the state of Shoemaker's Pond in the park and the quality of the environment in their neighborhood surrounding it. So in partnership with the city's stormwater department, we have been providing some one-on-one coaching on landscape solutions to manage rain where it falls. One of the consultations we did was actually at the home of Clayton Claver, who's here today actually. When we went to Clayton's home, there was no place to put in a rain garden because he was basically well forested in the Forest Hill area. And it took some convincing of Clayton to make sure that he didn't feel guilty about that, but that he was already doing a lot of good by managing stormwater and as well as other benefits, ecological benefits and human benefits as outlined on the t-shirts. We also encountered another Lakeside resident, Miranda, that's not her real name, it's a pseudonym. After that initial tree planting in Lakeside Park, she took it upon herself to actually go out and mulch the trees and look after them, make sure they were watered and doing well. So much so that she actually engaged other park patrons in the process. So much so that there was actually a rumor going around that she was rummaging in the park with somebody who wasn't her husband. So for me, these stories were part of the start of a journey to investigate what other communities have been doing to steward their urban forests. There have been some truly inspiring examples that we've found nearby in London, Ontario, the Greater Toronto Area, and right next door in Wellington County, which has a lot of people don't know, but they have the most prolific tree planting program in North America. And that's especially inspiring because it's the entire communities who are working together on that. And it's with the municipal partnerships that are leading it, but also not-for-profits and with the private sector as well. So REAP is excited to be part of this coalition from the ground floor, or I should say forest floor, on up. I believe the Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy in its proposed form is the beginning for Kitchener to join a seat at the table with these other leading jurisdictions. The principles espoused in the strategy to involve the community in the stewardship and growth of our urban forest is a big step forward in engaging with all of the Claytons and the Mirandas of the world in the city and providing support for them to expand their stewardship activities. For that reason, for what I've observed in the thoughtful and methodical drafting of this plan, of the 5-year plan, and the Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy more generally, I have full confidence that the strategy and the strategies laid out within. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. There is one question for you, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for all your work that you've done with the Lakeside neighborhood, or Friends of Lakeside Park, I'm sorry. I went and did a tour of the rain gardens that you've put in the Lakeside neighborhood. They're beautiful, and they're so interesting. You wouldn't know the purpose, unless it's explained to you necessarily, the purpose behind what they're doing. But really, and maybe you can explain a little bit about, instead of me explaining it, the purpose behind the rain gardens, and maybe a little bit about how much you've been able to keep sediment, etc., outside of Shoemaker Pond.
Yeah, so I always like to say the best rain garden is the one you can't even tell it's a rain garden. So it's really what's happening below the surface, and this is true with any sort of kinds of stormwater management. It's you almost have to make a cross section of it because it's basically excavated out, and it's the soil. You have a sandy soil mix which basically acts like a sponge and allows that water to absorb back into the ground. So that's sort of the purpose of a rain garden and some of the other landscape solutions which are under the category of low impact development. There's different words for it. But what that does is it reduces the amount of volume flowing off of people's properties. and that has sort of a improvement in water quality as well, because since that water isn't running off, it's not picking up all the salts, all the pollutants that basically go into that stormwater sewer, and then there's an outlet right in the park which basically goes overland into Shoemaker Pond, and that's sort of one example of what's happening writ large across all of our cities, not just City of Kitchener.
Well, that's great, and it's kind of a perfect segue into a motion that I have. And this has come from meeting with many different groups across Ward 8 who are good stewards of the land and good stewards of our trees that are really contributing to our stormwater management. So in recognition of the role that trees play in reducing stormwater runoff and to incentivize good tree maintenance practices and the expansion of tree canopy on private lands, the staff investigate providing credits for trees located on private property through the development of the Stormwater Utility Market Incentive Program, with a report back to Council in the first quarter of 2020.
Okay, we'll take that motion at the appropriate time. Thank you for bringing that forward. That's all the questions we have from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that forward. Next, we have Clayton Clever.
Hello again, council members. I'm speaking on behalf of two organizations, Love Your Hood and Reap Green Solutions, and there's in terms of implementing the urban canopy. So in May of last year, you identified two of your 5 priorities identified, included protecting trees and support tree planting on private lands. And I didn't do a great job yesterday, but you can see my property 25 years ago in about 1993. You can see all the trees that have fallen down, very forest-laden property. And this is a picture of my property yesterday. And as you can see, in many ways, I have not done a very good job of improving the urban canopy. However, it's why my presentation is called From Innocence to Experience. It's over the last 30 years almost. Trying to improve my property has resulted in diminished forest. However, my wife and I, we bought our home near 30 years ago, understanding that it was located in a forest and that we should protect the trees. And in January, I spoke to City Council at its budget meeting in support of improved bylaws to protect the urban canopy. As the lady in white over there addressed too, that currently there are no restrictions on property owners cutting down trees. I was showing the hawk pictures in January. So I've gained much better environmental practices through education and going to numerous workshops offered by Reap Green Solutions. Among them included rain garden workshops in Lakeside and participating in the building of rain gardens, learning how to soak it up, and how to use interlock pavers. And the gray pathway down is a project that I spent 2 or 3 weeks on 2 years ago in consultation with Rebecca Robinson from REAP. And it is rain friendly. It does soak down into the 3 sugar maples, which I produced a couple liters of maple syrup recently too. They still have the necessary moisture entering their roots. The pool interlock, the red and gray stone, is not. And that's the project that I did about 15 years ago. And in retrospect, I wish I would have done it differently. It does drain into the forest. It just isn't permeable, and that's been a big learning curve. I participated in Bloom in a Box. I particularly need shade-friendly plants. They're currently available again at REAP House. I've gone to best salting practices to help minimize the runoff into Schumacher Pond. And I have 4 rain barrels and have the stormwater reduction fee, which is a wonderful incentive here in Kitchener. And I might add, and this addresses your corporate climate action plan that you voted on earlier, that's a metal roof that we put on the house 25 plus years ago. Spent 3 times the cost. Probably will be living in the home for another 20 or 25 years. Never put another cent into the home. It was investment in the house. Never had to put out another penny on another roof, and never had to fill our landfill on Herb Street with roofing tiles. So it was money in back then, and investment in the future. So I look forward to having an active role in supporting an increased and improved urban canopy, and impressed with the 5-year plan, which begins next year. I'm hopeful that you will include money in the pilot project for REAP and Love Your Hood. I would be a willing participant in various projects, such as citizen tree pruning. My environmental innocence should not be repeated through experiences gained. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming in and for all you have done and all you continue to do for our environment. It's much appreciated by all of us. So thank you. There are no questions for you, but thank you for coming in. Okay, that's all the delegations that I have registered. So we'll move on to questions of staff. I have anybody who had rang in can ring in again, and I'll get you in order. We can ask questions on the additional motion or amendment as we go through. There's quite a number of questions. We'll start with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. And my question is in regards to when we look at, I can't seem to find the stat. Can you tell me the stat between private and public, the tree canopy? What's the percentage?
In terms of, there's...
David, can you just pull the mic a little bit closer to you?
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Is this better?
Yep.
I don't have the numbers exactly right with me, but I can provide you those. But the majority of the urban forest is on private property. And when we also look at the future, if we look at increasing canopy cover, the biggest opportunity is on private property.
Okay, so Councillor Davies mentioned that it's 54% is found on private land. So basically 50-50 is where we are. And if we, as a city, increased our measures with this plan, how much of that percentage of the canopy, I know this is kind of, like if we did full force and try to improve our percentage, how much of a difference would that be towards the canopy?
Are you asking in terms of how the split would be between city and private?
Yes. Like if we went full force and concentrated on our own properties first and not worried about the private lands and do our part, what would that percentage be wise?
I can't give you an exact percentage today, but the point is that we would very quickly run out of opportunities on city property, just because even though we are the largest single owner of the urban forest right now, when you look at it collectively, especially for future opportunities, if you're setting goals of say 40% or, nowadays they recommend for places such as this 40 to 60% canopy. Most of that has to happen on private property. If we were to carry out a canopy study, we can be much more specific with those kind of opportunities.
Gee, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
I can hear myself, yeah. So, I can't give you exact numbers today, but with as we move forward with doing a canopy study, we can be much more specific. And it's really important that in the same sense as there's a huge variation of canopy cover across the city, especially if we go beyond the wards and start looking at planning communities and that, there's a huge variation. There's also a huge variation in opportunities. So right now, while the city of Kitchener has the largest amount of urban forest, or the largest owner, if we were to look at increasing canopy cover, we would see that the biggest opportunities are on private property, and that if we were to undertake tree planting initiatives, the city of Kitchener, similar to other cities like Toronto and that, they discover that very quickly they start running out of land where they can plant trees, and they have to look to the private property to, so Kitchener's in a bit of a unique situation in that a lot of other cities, you see a much more distinct difference in that the private property, the importance is much bigger than it is here right now.
Okay, because the reason why I'm raising this is because when I look at the forests in the ward I represent, they seem to be not as healthy as what I remember as a kid. They seem to be a lot more healthier, they seem to be a lot more denser, and to me, that seems to be the first logical step to concentrate on. And not that I'm not saying the private section is not, but this is something that's in our control.
I turned my mic off. Niall wanted to add something.
Okay.
So I may have done to the first question, I may not to the second question. So
That's
I think,
okay.
as Dave was saying, one of the key things before we think about growing the forest canopy is understanding what we've got and what we should have. And so that is part of the first 5-year plan, the first 3-year plan, is to look to identify what that overall canopy target should be. So we know we've got a shortfall of trees because we've been taking them out at a faster rate than we've been putting them in recently because of climate change, EAB, storm impacts, and so on and so forth. So we know we have work to do. What we don't know is how much work we have to do beyond that, and that's something that we do need to bring back to council. I think that was kind of on your first question. We do know that if we want to grow the forest canopy beyond the 26% or thereabouts that we recognise that we have currently, that's a role that cannot be fully accommodated on city-owned property. That will have to be a shared responsibility, but we don't know to what extent we want to grow that forest canopy yet. So that's a piece of work that we're currently undertaking.
Okay, that's great. I guess my time's run out. I'll click in again, I guess. But when the time's appropriate, I'm prepared to move this recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Up next is Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. Just wondering, I know we're addressing the backlog of trees that need to be planted from the Emerald Ash Borer cut downs. Is there any idea of the time frame when that might begin?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the first of the plantings, we're actually planning it right now. Those first plantings will start this fall. We'll actually do a few this spring, but the main part of it will start this fall.
Fantastic. I'm 100% behind all this. I love where we're going on this, but I know as we plant more trees, I just want to make sure that our leaf collection system is going to be robust and be able to handle things as these more trees are planted. So are there plans to increase the number of sites that we can use for citizens to bring leaves to?
Oh, sorry, Ms. McGoldrick. Whoops. Hold on 1 second. I have too many mics on. There we go. Go ahead.
So through you, Chair, certainly as tree canopy grows, so does the amount of leaves and the challenge in the fall in terms of leaf litter and leaf collection. And so on an annual basis, staff do look to see where are those key pressure areas in terms of the leaf collection program, both from a leaf depot perspective and a loose leaf collection program. And so this actually falls under our stormwater utility, and as part of the water infrastructure program review, we did identify that there were pressures on the leaf collection budget and the need to look at what future forecasts may bring. And so this is a body of work over that 5-year water infrastructure program plan.
Okay, that's great to hear. And if I may, just from our friends from REAP, just a question for you. I'm really glad that we're partnering with you, and I know you mentioned Wellington County and their programs. I'm very well acquainted with Tony Woods and her Neighbor Woods team, and they have some regular tree talks, a great educational program for the residents of Wellington County, and I know they're in the process of giving away 160,000 trees to residents, to environmental groups, to service clubs, to schools. I'm wondering if there's a possibility of kind of maybe piggybacking on some of their speakers and maybe, borrowing their program to help educate our residents as well?
You can go to the podium. Okay. It's still on.
Absolutely, thank you. So in Wellington County, there's actually 2 programs. So the one you mentioned in Center Wellington, the Neighbor Woods program, and actually REAP, one of REAP's founding members was the Laura Environment Center. So we work already pretty closely with them, and so they do run some great education programs. And then what you're talking about in terms of the tree giveaway and the tree planting, that's actually the Green Legacy program, which is run through the County of Wellington. We're very familiar with them as well, and they've already been sort of advising us on those opportunities, and we've been talking to Reforest London and Toronto and in London and other organizations that are Toronto-based. So we're building up a network, so we do want to tap into that and take advantage of that to bring in those people and learn from those best practices.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you.
And thank you. Next is Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'm not sure there's going to be a question you can ask, but just in terms of, I'm curious about the percentages. Do we have an idea, like a ballpark idea of how many trees actually make up that 26% canopy? I'm just curious, is 1% 100,000 trees? Is it 10,000 trees? I'm curious what the...
In terms of the total number across the city?
Yes.
We don't have that number at this point. We have a very coarse level in terms of the canopy. We have those measurements, but we haven't done the kind of work that would be required to calculate the total number of trees and the benefits of those trees like some other cities have.
So I think just to give you a sense of context, though, for that, we know that the street tree inventory, so just the trees that are along the streets and within our parks, those that we inventoried last time around, there were about 66,000 of those. That excludes the dense areas and the big forested areas that we've got in our natural areas. So we know that we've got way more than 66,000, and that's on our part.
If it's not a difficult number to calculate, that might be useful in terms of our promotion and getting private sector the private property to get on board as well. Because knowing that, if we know what 1% the number of trees is, that might be a nice little goal for us to publicly put out there. So following up on that question then, in the recommendation, the $40,000 to REAP, do we have an idea of how many trees that will equate to $40,000?
Yeah, with that program, there will be a few components of that. So a key focus of it is the subsidized tree planting program. We're sort of following the model that has been developed in Toronto, which has been very successful, used elsewhere in York Region, Oakville, and places. So in that context, we're looking at possibly planting 65 new trees on private property. But the bonus of this program is that it's not just a tree planting program. There is actually consultation in that a REAP representative that's a trained arborist will go out and consult with the owner to really select the right tree for the right location. The homeowner commits to 2 years of aftercare in terms of watering, and also there is a follow-up by REAP to support that tree planting and that. So it's much more of an engaged process. We're also looking at holding a series of workshops to provide more educational information. And that is quite a range of things, whether it's specific things about tree canopy, or even we also heard a lot from residents. They want to know more about how to care for trees. So this will be how to plant a tree properly, how to prune a tree, those kind of things. And we're looking at holding up to 5 of those workshops this year. We're also looking at doing at least 1 or 2 coordinated large-scale tree planting efforts that would be where we can bring a large number of community members out. So we would be planting 200 or plus trees, little small saplings, and also looking at participating in a number of public events and that, again, to promote the urban forest.
Okay, the last part I want to touch on, and was touched upon by Councillor Anitis a little bit, is the capacity to increase the tree canopy on public lands. I don't, without commenting too much, I'm not comfortable relying entirely. Like, I'll certainly support this motion because it's more of a carrot than a stick for private property owners. But anecdotally, I have difficulty accepting the fact that there isn't much capacity on public lands, because I look at the number of parks that residents are frankly screaming, we want more shade in our parks, the number of boulevards where there's no trees. We could be engaging the school boards who would love to have trees on school board property, and the provincial land, other provincial lands as well, and regional lands for that matter. Has any of that figured into the available lands that we could be taking over that public ownership and not relying on the private sector to carry the weight here?
As I say, as we were to do more detailed information with looking at the canopy study and the potential, because we have the data now that tells us how much canopy is on the different types of land classes within the city. We also know what the potential canopy cover is for each of those parcels. So we need to do more work with that, but we can actually come back quite specific with what those opportunities are in that. And as you pointed out, there are a lot of other opportunities on other agency lands. So it's not just the city properties in that.
Okay, I won't speak again, Madam Chair, I know we're crunched for time, but I just wanted to comment clearly that this is what I will be looking for. I'll be looking for the information to come back to see if the city were to go at it purely in our own public ownership. That's what I want to see coming back in this. And I know there's going to be a significant financial cost related to that. We'll talk about that come budget time.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair.
I keep turning my mic off because I think you can hear better without with this mic on, so I keep forgetting to turn it back on. But go ahead, Niall.
Through you, Madam Chair. So you'll be pleased that in the 5-year plan, we are very much wanting to come back, and I suspect the first attempt at that will be this budget round, to give you options and opportunity to discuss how far we want to go, how quickly we want to go in terms of recovering that tree canopy, and that will be very much through a partnership approach where we definitely take responsibility for enhancing the tree canopy where we can on our own property, as well as working in partnership. And so this year, this first 3 years approved already, is us exploring that on both us and working through organisations like REAP on the private side of things. I expect that we will be bringing back recommendations on both of those in future budget cycles.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, actually, I was leading to a very similar line of questions that Councillor Davey has already asked, so I'll just quickly try to explore a little bit more on them. And I appreciate that this is going to be extensive time to collect all this information, and 3-year is the objective at this point before we start putting in hard commitments or recommendations. Is that correct?
So the initial through you, Madam Chair, the initial 3-year plan, which we are engaging currently, allows us to build up data around things like canopy targets and so on and so forth, and we're hoping to have some of that information back inside that 3 years. And so we do see the implementation as being iterative. When we have information to share and we have a plan of how we might be able to move forward, then yes, we would be bringing that back. We do have an enhanced tree planting program. I imagine that we would be bringing back under the 5-year implementation fairly early on a request for funding to support additional and enhanced tree planting on city-owned property, and that might come before that 3-year period.
And is it just enhanced tree planting, which I support on the onset, but are we also doing or do care of our existing forest? With management of those trees, because again, just planting new trees, again, although it's good, but not maintaining and pruning and improving the health of our existing trees. Although we may be planting new trees, we are going backwards in that case.
Thank you for that. And I'll reflect what Denise mentioned earlier. There isn't a list of priorities. It's not like we're going to tick number 1 off and then get down to number 2. The idea of the table that we presented is that's supposed to be activities that are undertaken simultaneously. So we very much do recognise that we need to take better care of what we've got. And so that's going to be one of the very early things that we're going to be looking for again this year. As we come back to the budget process, we'll be looking for some support on.
So as steps that I'm assuming that we would be looking at better maintenance of our on publicly owned lands, of the trees, and better maintenance of those trees, and that would be in the 2020 budget. So that would be the first item that we can really start touching on.
We'll probably bring more than one back for you to chew on, but it will certainly be in that first draft, yes.
Okay, excellent. And I want to reinforce what Councillor Davey has said, that we really need to determine of having a better idea of the existing lands, not just the urban forests that exist, that may already have a healthy coverage already, but the existing lands that where we could plant additional trees and broadening our urban forests. And that does include our partners, institutional partners out there. And the school board, I think, would be significant. So this 3-year body of work would include of assessing what the land mass would be on the public lands and institutional partners.
I think we can bring it back as part of the budget.
Yeah, we've just agreed. We think we can probably bring it back either this part for the next budget cycle or for the cycle after that, certainly, with that built out.
Well, sir, that would be excellent. I think the sooner we know that would give us a priority of where to focus first. Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I'm very happy to lend my support to this new initiative, and I'm glad to see a partnership strengthened with REAP Green Solutions. And I want to ask a question, 2 questions. One is, will we be looking at fine-tuning our response policy or protocol for when a resident calls in, as happened in my ward on Friday, noticing that somebody was cutting down a healthy tree, and really it's such a quick turnaround time where if that's to be stopped because it was on a property that was over an acre, so they had required a permit, they didn't have a permit, but I don't know if we have a protocol in place or if it just got missed, but there wasn't a quick enough turnaround time to save a lot of the branches of that tree before they were stopped.
So through you, Madam Chair, I may actually look to some of my colleagues in Development Services to help us out on this one. The unfortunate reality behind that one is somebody did something that they're not supposed to do, and it was a tree in this instance, but I suspect it's not the first time that somebody in the city has done something which should have required a permit that they haven't got a permit for. And so the process we have for finding out these things is unfortunately or fortunately relies on people calling in and us being able to respond, and the response on that one was relatively quick, not quick enough to save everything, but I think we did manage to save the tree, so thank you for yourself and everybody else that did rescue that up the horizon. And I know that at this end, once we got that information in, there was a very rapid response across many different departments to address that issue and make sure that the property owner was able to move forward appropriately if they want to in the future by getting a permit if they need to remove that tree.
So Niall, I'm not trying to put anybody in a defensive mode. All I'm trying to say is I'd like to ask staff to put their minds to a procedure that then is put out to all staff at the contact center and to councillors as well, so that going forward we know who to call and what is expected to happen, so that it's clear. That's all. And no need to comment further. I'm just saying that I'd like to see that happen if it's not already in place. Secondly, I just want to ask for clarification from Councillor Johnston, because the motion before us, or the amendment before us, is a little bit, I'm just a little confused, because right now, with the stormwater credit, it's only applicable for people who actually made a conscious effort to retain stormwater, as you know, and if we were to put this in place, is your intention that it would only be for trees that private property owners would then plant and then get credit for, or is it credit for existing trees that they just happen to have in their yard when they bought the place?
Go ahead, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Okay, well, this actually came out of when I was knocking on doors last fall. I spoke with a woman who said she has many mature trees on her lot, which she regularly has an arborist come in and look after. So she's spending quite a bit of money every year on maintaining and promoting the health of those trees. And she came up with the idea, and she said, is there a way of being incentivized for doing that? She said, I know that there's no way that I would even look to recover those funds, but even to have a recognition that there's many private property owners who are doing a really good job of looking after the trees on their property. And through speaking with our staff, we talked about that perhaps the best way of doing that would be through a stormwater rebate, because truly those larger trees are soaking up the water that would otherwise be running off, etc. So that's kind of the perspective and how we came about with this.
So would it be a credit for people who already have a tree that's been there for 50, 100 years? Is that what you're intending?
Well, I think so, but what we're asking for is a report back to council. So if staff would like to expand that and take a look at, how creative and innovative can our people be, and be able to then perhaps get a rebate back.
Okay, I'd like to see that honed a bit, because I do think that we need the stormwater utility funds, and I think that if we were to blanket give credit to anybody who applies with the tree on their property, I think that's not going to be heading towards the goal that you and I and our council have. So I'm just a little concerned with this, the way it's worded, but I will trust that we will be able to vote on anything concrete in the future anyway. So that's fine.
If you want to suggest any changes, or if you just want to leave it to staff to
that's fine. We can leave it to staff. That's fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you. Regarding public trees, I've heard stories and I've read reports and that talk about how in rich neighborhoods, wealthy neighborhoods, we have really good tall trees with huge canopies, and that in new residential areas in particular, or maybe not even new residential areas, but maybe in residential areas that are not sort of up there in that socioeconomic category, that we plant different trees on the boulevards and in those neighborhoods. Is that the City of Kitchener's practice?
In terms of planting different trees, no, that's, the City of Kitchener has a standard approach that we look to plant the appropriate tree for the appropriate location. So
what does that mean?
Really, that means that we don't plant trees that would conflict with three-phase hydro, or that, if we have a place to plant what we call as a large maturing tree, such as a sugar maple, that's what we plant in that. So it's really looking at the site itself. It's not looking at the social economics. But you are correct in saying that historically across the city, and this is typical of all cities, that you do tend to see higher canopy covers in areas that are more well-to-do. That's just a recognized fact. But many of the sustainable urban forest strategies and the canopy studies look to try to attempt to start to address that by setting specific canopy cover targets for areas with lower canopy in that.
So you're trying to mitigate that in some way? The problem that I'm
yes,
suggesting might
it can
exist.
certainly be a goal of those kind of programs.
Yeah. My second question has to do with development site bulletin boards. So when we see a site before it's developed, they always have trees around them, and nice big trees and bushy trees. And then when we see the finished product, suddenly there are no trees. Is there anything in bylaw that requires those diagrams to actually, translate into trees on the ground, or how can, does the city have anything to sort of work with this?
So through you, Madam Chair, we do spend a significant amount of time ensuring that trees which are supposed to be planted on city-owned property, so boulevard trees, which are quite often the ones that will form those glossy drawings, are planted. Now, quite often the glossy drawings will show you what the development will look like with a tree which has been there for 20 or 30 years, and the reality is it's a relatively small tree that goes in compared to that drawing. But we do spend time making sure that what a developer or any developer of any scale says they need to do, or what we ask them to do through the development process, is done, and they have a warranty period to retain that on the site. What we don't have control over is what they may or may not depict the yards of that development would look like, and so that would be something else.
Okay, so this takes me back to bylaw, and I noticed Gloria's left, but what bylaws are actually in place, if somebody could remind us of what's already on paper when it comes to trees and canopies? Just briefly, a very brief summary.
So I think at the highest level, a property of, I think it's about 1.2 acres or more, it's actually a hectares, 0.406 hectares, I think, or above, needs to have a permit to remove any redevelopment of that site would have to have a permit to address the tree removal.
Ms. McGoldrick, did you want to add something?
Sure. Just to further clarify, so we do have a private tree protection bylaw, and the trigger in terms of the size is properties greater than 1 acre. And then we also have a bylaw related to tree protection on public lands as well. So to protect public trees from being damaged or removed by residents.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I had two, but now I only have one question because the first one was answered. Just with regards to the motion, and I don't know if Margaret can answer this or someone else, located on private property, can you just clarify private property? Would that include multiple dwellings like condominium, corporation property? There's a number of different developments such as this and existing ones that have gone up that have mature trees and have planted trees, and I'm wondering where they fall in with this.
So through you, Madam Chair, private property is basically anything which isn't city-owned property. The region is an interesting one. The region would be an agency-owned property. It's public property, but it's not public property over which we have control. But essentially everything over which we don't have control would be private property. So that would include other agencies that we might share resources with. So school board would be a good example that's already been talked about them. They are a private property to us, although a slightly different nature. Specifically to your question, yes, a condo would be private property.
Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola?
A couple of questions. My first question is, we were talking about the Greenbelt area neighborhood. Where is that? Can you tell me that without?
Yep, go ahead. Queuing. Councillor Johnston?
Yes, so that would be the area that borders on Waterloo around Fisher-Hallman Road, Maple Hill Drive, Westwood, Glasgow Street.
So I wondered where the Greenbelt area was. Thank you. In this resolution here what are we approving here? Are we approving any expending of funds, or what exactly are we approving, other than the bottom resolution? Can you just give me a quick recap of what we're actually approving as far as expending of funds are concerned?
So, through you, Madam Chair, if I understand the question correctly, you're not approving any additional spend today. We would be bringing back, what we're doing is we're sharing with you for information what we believe the implementation priority should look like, and seeking to gain your feedback and discussion around that to help us inform us bringing back further recommendations through the business plan and budget process.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you. That explains it. Thank you. The bottom item, the $40,000 grant that we were going to. Why are we feeding that out? Why don't we look after that ourselves?
So Through you, Madam Chair, we think we can do a better job working in partnership. This is not an area in which we have expertise, skill or capacity to be able to deliver a program in-house, and so we've had an exciting and good relationship with Reap Green Solutions in the past, and this seems to us to be a very natural evolution of that partnership.
Okay. Now, can you tell who makes the rules that go along with that $40,000? Does this council have any input, or is it just a grant and that's it?
So through you, Madam Chair, when we sought the 40,000 and went through the budget process, and what we're now asking to do is enter into that partnership, you would be placing faith in staff to work with Reap Green Solutions in an appropriate way. But as David outlined earlier, the process would be to establish plantings on private property in an appropriate way with skilled resources and expertise to help that, and to do community education and outreach sessions.
So it's a lot of it's a matter of faith, because our constituents will be asking us how they might get that, and so isn't this resolution to me? Does that supersede this $40,000 or what? I'm not sure I clearly understand what it's about.
I think it's just asking staff to come back with a report with respect to using the stormwater utility as an incentive program for people to put trees on their property and look after them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone's done round one. Councillor Ioannidis, you have more questions?
My question's been answered, but I don't want
comments. Question? Comments, Councillor? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm glad to see that there is still extensive information that will come back to us before we determine any hard set changes to our current policies. One of which I would hope that we could get is explore trees on private lands, and I'm speaking more on citizen-owned lands that may not be in a larger natural area that may have existed already, so a forest and a large owner that may own many acres. I'm speaking more specifically on subdivisions where there are now mature trees that exist. The reason why I ask is, and I'll go into my comments afterwards, is that these are trees that were planted by private citizens on their own accord, and trees that they've maintained over a number of years now. That's the benefit that the community is driving from. So what is that canopy that we can estimate that's based on private planted tree? Not a natural forest, because some developer or farmer may own many, many acres and the natural forest has existed on its own, but trees that we can ascertain that were planted by private individuals. Okay. Private property, on their own private property. So I'll lead my comments from this. So the reason why I asked that information is similar to what Councillor, I think, Davey or Ioannidis said, that we need to, as important as this is, to protect and broaden our urban forest tree canopy for future generations, we got to do it in a partnership approach. And what needs to be done is through a incentivized, carrot as opposed to the stick approach. And that's why I think this is a really wise approach to consider as a review that Councillor Johnston has put forward in putting recommendations where we can work with our citizens to better enhance our urban forest tree canopy and incentivize them as well. The reason why I asked the information from staff for this to come forward down the road to see exactly what level of that tree canopy that we have in our city that's planted in by our private citizens is many of the subdivisions that we see right now. It's hard to see it right now, picture right now, because some of them may be 50, 60, 80 years old, of those subdivisions that have very massive mature trees in their backyards or on their private lands. But many, many years ago, those subdivisions were new. There were no trees there. They were planted by those private citizens. And that's why we have to be careful, the policies that we set, although we may be able to protect the canopy that we have right now, it would disincentivize of new homeowners and the vast new subdivisions that are coming in on the southwest side, which it looks barren right now, but there are private citizens that are taking the prudent and responsible steps right now of planting, nourishing those those seedlings as new trees in their backyards, which they themselves, many years from now, will provide that necessary tree canopy. And if you start approaching the step that we want to consider in limitation, or take away that ability to control and have the rights of the private landowner, well, guess what? Those people may not be, because they may see, wait a minute, this may impact my home. This may impact the responsibilities that are behest on me, being a caretaker of that tree, being forced rather than that being their own choice. So that's why I think we have to be very careful. We have to be cautious in that approach. We have to work in a partnership aspect. And more importantly, I think, similar to our climate action plan, we need to operate by example. So if we have citizens calling and complaining about the health of their boulevard trees, if you have citizens calling and complaining, saying, please, there was a tree cut on my boulevard a couple of years ago, please plant a new one. And at the same time, now we're saying, you know what, now you got to maintain your trees on your private land, or you got to plant more trees on your private land. Well, guess what? We have to lead by example. So those are the steps I would love to see in the next 3 to 5 years in this program. What steps do we take that starts us being that good example to our citizens, and more importantly, better capture the lands that we have already through our parks, giving that necessary shade, increasing the environmental aspect of planting more trees in our parks, as well as working with partners that are in the institutional sector, like the school board, like the region, and seeing how can we encourage them to step up to the plate as well, as we do ourselves. Thank you.
I have just 2 quick questions. Did the report question or look at the duration for the warranty of boulevard trees? Did we relook at, obviously representing a new area, more about warranty of new trees than existing trees? So did we look at that at all?
We didn't look at that specifically in the strategy, just because the strategy is a much bigger picture. But as standard practice, we have a 2-year warranty on all of the trees that are planted. So that's sort of standard for those kind of works and that. And that's what we currently work with.
Is that long enough? 2 years? There's a lot of trees that die in the new area, and then, you don't want us to be on the hook if it's only 2 years old.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different challenges with tree planting within some of the new subdivisions and that, but if we have the adequate watering, we know that we can reestablish a tree within that 2-year period. It's the watering that's the critical issue, and we do an inspection on the first year and then on the second year, so we're able to catch those trees that are a problem in that. So, and it's really the factor is that if the tree's not looking healthy and vigorous, then it's not accepted and it has to be replaced. So we've worked a lot to improve those standards that we've been using there.
Having said that, have we also looked at more mature trees being planted in new subdivisions? Not necessarily big, 80-year-old trees, but something that's more mature than what's going in now?
We currently use what's called 50 millimeter balled and burlap stock, which is many other municipalities use. The funny thing is with trees is that when we transplant them, they lose about 90-95% of the root system. So there's a strong belief that if we plant a bigger tree, it will actually reestablish faster and quicker. And yet the truth of it is, if we were to plant trees a little bit smaller and to get that watering that we require, a lot of times those smaller trees will outperform those big ones. And so it's sort of that balance. As long as we get enough water to the tree based on its size, it will grow and reestablish. But if we also plant a larger tree, then we would actually have to extend that watering period beyond those 2 years, which gets us into some challenges with the warranty periods and that too.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Councillor Ioannidis, you want to make comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. I'm just very pleased to see that this is here. I've been, myself and I know others, have been very vocal about having a tree canopy and how valuable it is to our residents and citizens. And it's good that we're going to have a strategy moving forward. And it's one of the things that I hear quite a bit often with residents and the ones I represent in Ward 7 in particular. And I do agree with some of the things that Councillor Singh has mentioned too as well. I prefer that we deal with in partnerships with private residents rather than as Councillor Singh puts it, the stick. Because I think if we do our job and we do our job well, we won't need to have that approach. In fact, I think we'd be more than achieving the goals that we want if we took care of our homes first. But again, I think it's in partnerships, with private residents would also be beneficial. So as long as we have that holistic approach and looking at this and not be detrimental to the overall look of what we're trying to achieve, I think that's the route that we should be going. So I'm more than happy to see this here, and I look forward to in the next 5-10 years to have less complaints about trees not being looked after and everything else, and having more dense forests.
Thank you. Mayor Verbenovich.
Thank you very much. And just very quickly, because I know we're running late, but I wanted to add my thanks to the work that's been done by staff and the citizens that have been here and have been part of the process and have been engaged and advocates for our strategy. This is so important, and as Councillor Ioannidis just said, I remember, in my time as a ward councillor, and even now as mayor, the tree canopy is something that regularly comes up from residents about its importance, and it lines up so nicely with what we're also trying to do in terms of GHG reduction and so on. So with all that in mind, I'm certainly pleased to support and want to thank staff for all the great work that's been done on this.
There's no one else in the queue, and I just quickly wanted to thank staff for all the work that they've done on this, and I think we have a lot of room to grow. I think we're just getting there, and I think we've been working hard to get to a good place in the last couple of years, and I think with this strategy it'll help us to continue to move forward. But I know in my ward that I had a resident who requested a boulevard tree, and it was like, no, you can't have one. And I think we need to be a little bit more progressive and make sure that if someone's requesting one, that we have the ability to give them one and they're ready to nurture and grow that tree. And that's on our land versus theirs. So I think there's definitely some work to do in representing new areas and new developments. It takes a long time to nurture those trees, and I think once we need to really look at what that looks like from the get-go, and I think we've done a pretty good job at doing that. Now it's just a wait and let them grow. So I think it's an important piece and an important strategy that we need to continue to move forward. So with that, we have the recommendations. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. We'll deal with the amendment or the addition first. So what you see on your screen with regards to a report coming back to council to look at the stormwater utility as something that might incentivize property owners to put trees on their property. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Okay, and then we move to the recommendations in the staff report. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much for your dedication to this item. Next, we're going to move on to our last one, and I just do a time check that we're supposed to be finished now, and this item's been given half an hour, and we have a very tight schedule for lunch and starting out finance and corporate services. So I want to give this its time, but let's keep it moving along at the same time. So Ms. McNeil is here to make a 5-minute, no more than 5 minutes, just kidding, a 5-minute presentation on the administrative monetary penalty system. Welcome.
Thank you. Diana? So thank you. And as council can imagine, this has been a complex project with a lot of moving pieces. Therefore, I just wanted to quickly highlight the process and the benefits of an AMPS project as outlined in the report. So The current process to adjudicate or resolve parking tickets is guided by provincial legislation with really little room to apply any type of dispute resolution methods. We're seeing a continuous impact on the provincial court system, and we currently receive approximately 1,000 trial requests a year for parking-related matters. The Municipal Act now provides for a system known as administrative monetary penalties, which moving forward I'll refer to as AMPs. Several municipalities have implemented AMPs, and the AMPs project was approved on Bylaw Enforcement's business plan for 2018 and 2019. Staff began working on the project in 2018 and have spent almost 18 months working on the research, development, and implementation of this program. This program has been a joint project with the City of Waterloo's Municipal Enforcement Services Division, and if I could just take a moment to introduce Susan Smith, who is with Legal Services at City of Waterloo, and Shane Turner, and the three of us have formed the project team to develop the AMPS program. So the current process is contained in the Provincial Offences Act, where timelines, fees, and court processes are prescribed. As mentioned earlier, there's very little latitude for staff to attempt to resolve issues outside of that prescribed process, so customers are basically given the option of you can pay your ticket or you can take it to court. An AMPS process moves the current process out of the court system to a municipally administered dispute resolution process, which is aimed at earlier resolution. The legislation for an AMPS process requires the following. It requires a procedural bylaw, which is Schedule A in your package. It requires a screening and hearing officer's appointment bylaw, which is Schedule B. And it also requires an amendment to existing parking bylaws, which is Schedule C. It also requires a set of new policies, which will come to Council on May 13th, which ensure fairness and accountability through this process. Finally, approval is required of administrative fees for people who are late or fail to respond or attend. Once a penalty notice or a ticket is issued, the person can pay it or attend the bylaw office and request to speak to a screening officer. That screening officer will have the ability to discuss the circumstances with the person in an attempt to resolve the matter. The screening officer also has increased level of discretion to resolve the issue, such as reducing the ticket, providing an extension of time to pay, or setting up a payment plan, which currently is not permitted and can only be granted by a justice of the peace. If the person is satisfied with the resolution, they can pay the required fine amount. If they're not satisfied, they always have the ability to request a hearing, which will be heard by a hearings officer. Hearings will take place at City Hall in the council chambers, and staff anticipate that to happen once a month in the City of Kitchener and once a month in the City of Waterloo. Hearings will be presided over by a hearings officer who will be an independent party but will be appointed by council. The hearing can be considered quasi-judicial, but is significantly less formal than the provincial offences process. The decision of a hearings officer is final, and any resulting fine is due and payable. If the fine is not paid within the amount of time given for payment, then we will continue to forward them onto the MTO for collection through their plate denial system as we currently do now. The benefits of AMPS is that it provides enhanced customer service. It's less formal and intimidating than the current process. Customers don't have to take a day off work to fight a ticket, and most matters will be resolved at the screening process. It relieves pressure on the regional court system and provides staff with enhanced level of discretion to resolve the issues. There's more control over scheduling, which will significantly reduce wait times. Currently, our wait times if somebody requests a trial is between 8 and 9 months to get a trial date. Staff believe we can accommodate that in 2 to 3 months' time. There's also an element of public and officer safety. Currently, under the process, the officer is required to either place the ticket on the vehicle or to serve it directly to the person driving the vehicle. This often, particularly in school zones, results in drive-aways, people trying to drive away before we can get that ticket on. And our experience has been that we've had multiple officers that have been hit by vehicles. We've also had children's safety put at risk because people go speeding off and then there's potentially kids crossing the road. So this process allows us to be able to mail a penalty notice after the date. So therefore, we don't have to engage in that, in that public safety manner. The cost for a hearings officer will be covered through the program budget, and staff anticipate it'll be $6,000 to $8,000 a year annually. We will also require an office renovation at the bylaw office to create a screening office, and those costs will be paid back through revenues generated through the program as well. We anticipate that there will be some increase in revenue resulting from us being able to retain a larger portion of existing late fees. And fees will only apply to people who do not follow the prescribed process or pay their ticket on time. So if somebody receives a ticket and pays it or comes in for a screening process, they do not incur any additional fees at all. And again, the focus is on early resolution that would avoid the application of late fees. So there's 4 proposed administrative fees recommended to be approved by Council. The first is an MTO search fee. The MTO will now be charging us $8.25 every time we run a plate. So this will be cost recovery for the city, and we're proposing a $10 search fee. There will also be a late fee of $25 that we're looking to add. Currently, that late fee is $16. It has not been adjusted in over 20 years. Through the current process, and we now share that $16 with the region and the province, so we would be able to retain the whole portion of this. A hearing non-appearance fee we've set at $50. This is simply cost recovery. If somebody requests a trial and doesn't show up, they'll be invoiced $50. And then there's a plate denial fee, which is a current fee that is already being applied by the MTO. And then they send us a check for that. We will now have to collect that before going to plate denial. So it's already there, it's just the collection will be different. So again, fees are an incentive, a deterrent for people to pay on time. And lastly, next steps. So City of Waterloo's taken this to their council last week on April 8th, and it was approved. We are jointly working on a joint communications plan to be released, as well as some education for the public. We will be working on finalizing policies to be presented to Council, and those will come May 13th. And we're looking at implementing software updates to our existing parking system. So moving forward, we still need to revise our penalty notice and all related forms, and we need to go through the posting and recruitment process to hire a hearings officer and the training of staff. So our target for a go-live date right now is set at June 3rd, and hence why we're here today. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry, so go live June 3rd. That also, we are bringing this to special council right after this meeting, right?
That's correct.
In order to meet that deadline?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Actually, no questions. Just happy to move this. It's a pretty straightforward report.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
A couple of questions. If someone doesn't pay a ticket now, do they have a certain time that they, if they want to contest it, does it have to be done within a certain time?
Go ahead, Gloria.
Through the chair, yes, they have a specific amount of time now that they can do it. What we've done is we've expanded that time frame to give them more time to come into our office and have that conversation with the screening officer and make a decision as to what they'd like to do.
Yeah, but now if they go through the hearing, and at that point they cannot contest it further. That's it.
That's correct.
Yeah, so they won't be able to. Okay. What power does this minor judge have? How does that person? Where do the rules for that person come from?
So the policies that will be coming to Council on May 13th will outline in more detail what the rules are and the procedures for that hearing officer. But they will have final decision on whatever decision is made that day, but it is still their responsibility to listen to both sides and look at all of the evidence that's before them before making a decision.
Yeah, but there will be a set of guiding rules. That's all I was looking. Yeah, when it comes to the screener, I was wondering about that. It says that anybody can be a screener. That's the first step in the process. Now, does that mean that the person that actually issued the ticket can also be the screener?
Through the chair, No. So what we've done is our intent is to set up our current administrative staff as well as management staff as being screening officers. So it would not be anybody who's actually administering a ticket that would be doing that screening.
So that will be sort of written in there or implied somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, what do we gain by partnering with Waterloo? I think I know, but if you can just expand. And the other question I was going to ask is, did we approach Cambridge too to get in on this?
Through the chair, the advantages of partnering with Waterloo is that I think regardless of where somebody receives a parking ticket now, the process is the same. So they're going to have the exact same process regardless if they're in Kitchener or Waterloo. The other benefit to that is it's allowed us the ability to share resources when going through this process to set it up. But we've also opened it up, whereas if a resident, let's say a Kitchener hearing date does not work for a resident, but a Waterloo date does, we've opened that up that they can go to either or, and then it makes it a little bit more customer friendly.
Okay, very good.
And just to add to that, we did approach Cambridge and they were not in a position to join us on the project at that time.
Thank you. I don't like, I already talked to you about issues coming to council and having to ratify them right away, but in this case, I will still support it. But thank you.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Great work and great collaborative work, too, with Kitchener and Waterloo. Just wondering if you might have any idea of the volume we might expect monthly for the hearings.
Through the chair, basically the only point of reference that we have at this point is what we've heard from other municipalities. So, we've heard that people have gone from even more than 1,000 trial requests a year to they are often canceling hearing dates monthly, to some hold 1.5 days a month. So we're not really certain what to expect in terms of hearings, but what we have heard repetitively was that most of these issues are resolved at the screening stage. So people just want that opportunity to come in and be heard and have some sort of consideration given.
Great. Thank you. I really love this approach. Great work.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Yes, thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock, and thanks, Gloria, for this excellent report. You did touch upon Waterloo, so I was just wondering how, with Councillor Gazzola, you mentioned Waterloo, and so they're going to have their own hearing office, and we're going to have our own hearing offices. That's how it's going to work?
Through the chair, so how we're going to organize it is that we're going to recruit hearings officers and share them. So they will be a pool of hearings officers that will rotate between Kitchener and Waterloo. We will have one set date a month. Waterloo will have one set date a month, and then we will fill those dates depending on availability and where customers prefer to have their hearing heard.
Okay, so that hearing office is going to be set in Kitchener, so for all the staff?
True. So we will have one day a month here, and it will be held in the council chambers.
Okay, but I mean, as far as during the week when there is no hearings and these hearing officers, what are they doing in between?
Sorry. So to clarify, they will be on contract, so they will only be coming in as required.
Okay. And how much revenue are you anticipating? Is it just all basically cost recovery?
Through the chair, we do anticipate there will be some revenue to be generated through this, just simply because we are keeping a larger portion of that, where now we have to share that. We don't know exactly what that will look like, which is why in the report I had proposed to come back with some numbers for the 2021 operating budget process, because I don't think we'll get a good enough understanding of what that'll look like over the next 6 months for next budget year. But we do anticipate that it will be cost neutral with probably some revenue to be generated.
Okay. I'm all for the cost recovery, but in addition, if we're going to be providing a service to our residents and it's going to be extra convenient for them, I'm not opposed to generating some form of revenue with that.
Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you for this. I think it's on the face of it, a great idea. On page 9.5, it says, although AMPS can involve a variety of municipal bylaw violations. Is there any thought of expanding beyond just parking tickets?
Through the chair, there is some, we have had discussion of expanding it. We chose to start with the parking violations simply because of the volume of them that go through the court system. So we thought that was a good place to start, but we would certainly be interested in looking at moving other type of violations to this process.
Okay, so along those same lines, further up on the page, it talks about the municipalities across Ontario that have implemented AMPS programs. Were they all implemented around parking violations, or does it vary?
Through the chair, majority have started with parking violations. There's a couple that have moved on to other types of violations more recently, but yeah, I think they've all generally started with the parking.
Okay, and my final question would be, do you fear or worry at all about becoming a collection agency?
Through the chair, the beauty of this is that it'll be the exact same as the program that we have now, that MTO is actually our collection agency. So through their plate denial system, if somebody doesn't pay, we upload it to them, and then somebody's not able to renew their license plate until they pay their outstanding fines.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovich?
Just very quickly, great initiative, great collaboration. Just shows how well we can work together in terms of some of the shared services between our two communities. Thank you.
Okay, there is no further questions. Did anyone want to make a comment? There's no need to. Just because we're out of time. I just want to thank staff for working on this together, and I think it's a great program, and happy that you were able to bring it forward. With that, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, I now turn the mic over to, that ends Community and Infrastructure Services. I now turn it over to Mayor Verbanovich for Special Council.
Thank you very much. I'll call this Special Council meeting to order. Item number 1, Councillor Galloway-Seelock, can you bring that forward from CSD
I bring
Committee?
item number 1 in
rather.
from Community Infrastructure Services. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dave Schneider.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Motion to go in camera for a land acquisition disposition issue. Moved by Councillor Johnson, second by Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to recess. Councillor Davey, Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.